All right, so are you ready to take a deep dive today into the role of the First Lady in American politics?
I am definitely ready.
We've got a fantastic book to guide us, First Women, The Grace and Power of America's Modern First Ladies by Kate Anderson Brower.
Hmm.
And I think we're going to learn a lot about this role.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have this misconception that it's just about fashion and, hosting dinners.
Right.
But there's so much more to it.
Absolutely.
It's a position of power, influence, and it's constantly evolving.
Yeah, and you mentioned power, and it's interesting because they're not elected officials, but they wield this incredible influence, often shaping policy and public perception.
Right, and that's the paradox of the role. They have this platform, but they're also under intense scrutiny.
It's like they're constantly walking this tightrope,
Right.
balancing the expectations of the public with their own personal goals and ambitions.
Absolutely. And Brower really captures that tension in her book. She interviewed a lot of these women.
Oh,
And she really paints this picture of remarkable strength and resilience, but also the immense pressure that comes with living in this fishbowl.
I can't even imagine
Yeah.
every word, every action, every fashion choice analyzed and dissected by the media and the public.
It's got to be exhausting.
Yeah. And Rosalind Carter actually said, I was criticized for sitting in on cabinet meetings. I was criticized when I didn't do more. I just had to do what I wanted because no matter what, I was going to be under fire.
Oh, wow.
I mean,
Yeah, it's a no-win situation.
it does seem that way.
It really does.
But it's interesting to see how the role has evolved over time.
Yeah.
From the early days of Martha Washington to the present day,
Oh, absolutely.
reflecting both the changing expectations of society and the unique personalities of these women.
It's amazing to see how they've each made their mark on the role.
And speaking of changing times,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
can you imagine
Yeah.
any first lady today being able to pull a Pat Nixon
What do you mean?
and dress up in disguise to walk around Georgetown?
Oh,
The level of security and media attention is just, it's insane.
it's a different world.
It is. So this kind of leads me to something I've always wondered about. How do these women balance their personal lives with this incredibly public role?
That's a great question. And it's something that Brower really delves into. She talks about the importance of finding moments of normalcy, those connections that transcend the political landscape.
Yeah.
For instance, she tells this really touching story about Jackie Kennedy returning to the White House after the assassination. She was invited by Pat Nixon for the unveiling of JFK's portrait.
Wow, I had never heard that before. That's incredible. I mean, to think about these two women from different political parties,
Yeah.
finding solace and camaraderie in that shared experience.
Right. It really speaks to the human side of this role.
Yeah.
The bonds that can form even amidst all the pressure and scrutiny of the White House.
Absolutely. And let's not forget the expectation that they champion social causes.
Right.
It seems like such a delicate dance, choosing a platform that resonates with the public, but without being too controversial or, stepping on too many toes.
Oh, it's definitely a balancing act. We see this throughout history. From Lady Bird Johnson's beautification campaign to Michelle Obama's Let's Move initiative.
Right. And even those seemingly uncontroversial initiatives,
Yeah,
can be perceived as political.
absolutely.
And these first ladies, they have to navigate that minefield so carefully.
It's true. And it raises the question of how much agency they really have in choosing their platform and shaping their public image.
Right. Because you would think that they could choose whatever they're passionate about. But it's not always that simple.
Not at all.
And, it's interesting to think about the different strategies they've used to navigate these challenges. For instance, Michelle Obama was so effective at using humor and personal anecdotes to really humanize her husband
Oh, she was brilliant at that.
and make him seem more relatable.
It definitely had a positive impact on his presidency.
Oh, for sure.
But, that humanizing role can also be a double-edged sword.
Oh, how so?
Well, it often reinforces these traditional gender roles
Right.
with the expectation that the First Lady should be warm and nurturing and focused on domestic issues,
I see what you mean.
even if they have their own professional ambitions
Culture.
and intellectual pursuits.
It's interesting because it brings us to Hillary Clinton, who really challenged those traditional expectations.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, she was highly visible, politically active, and she was openly ambitious.
She even had her own office in the West Wing.
Exactly.
She wasn't content to just play the role of the supportive spouse.
No.
She wanted to actively shape policy. She led healthcare reform efforts. She really broke the mold of what a first lady could be.
And of course, that led to a lot of backlash, right? People weren't quite sure what to make of a first lady who was so assertive and so involved in the political arena.
It was definitely a turning point.
It seems like it.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to consider how her time as First Lady paved the way for others to be more politically engaged and outspoken.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how the role will continue to evolve in the years to come.
Oh, for sure.
Especially, speaking of evolving roles,
Mm-hmm.
Jill Biden is making history as the first lady to hold a paid job outside the White House.
Right.
What do you think this means for the future of the position?
Well, it's definitely groundbreaking. It raises a lot of questions about how future First Ladies, or maybe even First Gentlemen, will navigate that work-life balance and the expectations of this very public role.
It's a conversation that's just beginning, and
Mm-hmm.
I, for one, am really curious to see how it unfolds. But for now, I think we should delve a bit deeper into the lives of these fascinating women. Starting with Jackie Kennedy,
Okay.
whose iconic style and tragic story continues to captivate us even today.
She's a perfect example of how a First Lady can use her platform to not only shape her husband's image, but also leave an indelible mark on American culture and history.
For sure. I'm eager to hear more about that and how she managed to navigate the immense pressures and expectations that came with being thrust onto the world stage at such a young age.
It's an incredible story of resilience, grace, and a deep understanding of the power of imagery and symbolism.
Well, let's dive in.
Let's do it. So, Jackie Kennedy's approach to the White House,
Oof,
it was really groundbreaking.
In what way?
Well, it wasn't just about aesthetics, It was about using the power of imagery and symbolism to shape public perception
Okay.
and really connect with people on a deeper level.
Yeah, I remember seeing pictures of her White House restoration efforts. It seemed like she was uncovering all these hidden treasures and,
Yeah,
bringing history to life.
exactly. She was appalled by the state of the White House when she arrived. Historic artifacts were just gathering dust and storage.
Oh, wow.
And she saw this opportunity to transform it into a showcase for American history and culture.
So she wasn't just redecorating, she was creating a museum-like experience.
Exactly. She worked tirelessly with historians and curators, painstakingly researching each piece and its significance.
Ah.
She even brought in televised tours,
Oh, that's cool.
allowing everyday Americans to experience the White House's rich history firsthand.
That's brilliant.
It was a brilliant move, both culturally and politically.
It makes you realize that every detail, every piece of furniture, every painting tells a story.
Right.
And she used those stories to connect with the public and elevate the role of the First Lady, beyond just being a fashionable hostess.
She understood the power of storytelling. She used it masterfully.
Yeah.
But her influence went far beyond the White House walls. She was also a shrewd political operator, advising her husband on everything from fashion to foreign policy.
Wow.
And she was particularly adept at charming world leaders, further solidifying her image as this global icon.
It's almost like she was this incredible private woman playing a very public role and somehow managing to do both authentically.
She was a master of navigating that duality. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about Lady Bird Johnson. Unlike Jackie, she didn't come from a world of wealth and privilege,
Right.
but she was no less influential in shaping her husband's presidency and leaving her own mark on American society.
Yeah, I remember her beautification campaign. It always seemed a bit simplistic to me, but now that I think about it, it was happening during a very tumultuous time in our history. The Vietnam War,
Yeah.
the Civil Rights Movement. Perhaps it was a strategic choice to focus on something less divisive.
You're onto something there. Remember, this was a time of great social and political upheaval. Lady Bird's focus on beautification was a way to promote unity and healing, to offer a vision of a more beautiful and harmonious America.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So it's fascinating how first ladies often use these seemingly safe initiatives to address deeper issues.
Exactly.
In Lady Bird's case, it was a clever way to tackle environmental concerns without being overtly political.
Exactly, and her efforts had a lasting impact. I mean, the Highway Beautification Act, for instance, significantly reduced the number of billboards, cluttering our landscapes.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
And her advocacy for urban renewal projects helped revitalize cities across the country.
That's incredible.
Yeah?
It's a reminder that we shouldn't underestimate the power of these soft power initiatives. And Lady Bird was also a force behind the scenes, right?
Oh, absolutely.
She was a confidant to her husband, often acting as a calming influence on his legendary temper
That's right.
and offering savvy political advice.
She was a shrewd political strategist in her own right. Brower tells this story about Lady Bird traveling to the Deep South on what was called the Lady Bird Express, advocating for the Civil Rights Act.
Wow.
Imagine that, facing death threats and intense opposition just to speak out for what she believed in.
It's incredible to think about the courage these women displayed, often putting themselves in harm's way to support their husbands and their causes. It's a reminder that the role of the First Lady isn't just about ribbon cutting and hosting dinners. It
Right.
can be a very demanding and even dangerous position.
Absolutely. And they often face these challenges with grace and determination, even when their efforts were met with resistance or ridicule.
It's true.
Take Pat Nixon, for example. She's often remembered as Plastic Pat, always smiling, always composed, even during the tumultuous Nixon presidency.
Right.
But Brower argues that this was a carefully constructed persona, a way to protect herself and her husband from the relentless media scrutiny.
I'm starting to see a pattern here. These women were expected to be strong and stoic in the face of adversity, even when they were dealing with personal struggles and political turmoil behind the scenes.
It's a heavy burden to bear, and it speaks to their resilience and their commitment to public service. Pat Nixon, despite her carefully cultivated image, was a deeply private person. But she also stepped up and played an active role in foreign policy, traveling expensively and advocating for humanitarian causes.
Didn't she play a key role in opening diplomatic relations with China?
She did. She was the first lady to visit China, and her efforts were instrumental in establishing those diplomatic ties.
Wow.
It's a significant achievement that often gets overshadowed by the Watergate scandal. But it's a reminder that these women had their own agendas, their own areas of expertise, and they weren't afraid to use their platform to make a difference on the world stage. It's really interesting to look back and see how these expectations and pressures kind of shaped the approaches of later first ladies.
Yeah, for sure.
Betty Ford, for example, really broke the mold. With her candor and willingness to discuss topics that were previously considered taboo.
Oh, totally. She was so open about her breast cancer diagnosis, her struggles with addiction, even her support for the Equal Rights Amendment.
Right.
It must have been quite a shock to the system back then.
It was a huge departure from the more reserved and carefully curated images of her predecessors. But, her openness resonated with so many Americans.
Yeah.
She helped to destigmatize these issues and sparked important national conversations.
It seems like she really understood the power of using her platform to connect with people on a personal level,
Hmm.
even if it meant, challenging social norms and facing criticism.
Exactly. And then you have Rosalind Carter, who was deeply involved in policy discussions, even attending cabinet meetings, which was unheard of at the time.
Yeah, I can only imagine the backlash she received for that.
Yeah.
It seems like every time a first lady tried to kind of push the boundaries of the role, she was met with resistance.
It's a pattern we see throughout history,
Meh.
and yet they persisted.
That's true.
Rosalind Carter was a strong advocate for mental health awareness, a cause that was deeply personal to her,
Right.
and she used her position to elevate issues that were often ignored or stigmatized.
It's inspiring to see how these women used their platform to advocate for change, even when it meant facing criticism and challenging the status quo.
And then we have Nancy Reagan, who, like Jackie Kennedy, understood the power of image and symbolism.
Yeah.
She was fiercely protective of her husband's image and very strategic in shaping his public persona.
Her Just Say No campaign was everywhere. It was so effective in raising awareness about drug abuse. But it also, sparked debate about whether it oversimplified a complex issue.
It's true that the campaign had its critics, but there's no denying that she had a knack for capturing the public's attention and mobilizing support for a cause she believed in.
For sure.
And she was also a powerful force behind the scenes in the Reagan White House,
Yeah.
influencing personnel decisions and shaping policy.
So she really wielded her influence in a way that few first ladies had before.
Exactly.
And then, of course, there's Barbara Bush, who brought a completely different energy to the role.
Oh, she was fantastic.
So warm, witty, and incredibly down to earth.
She was known for her grandmotherly wisdom and her ability to connect with people from all walks of life.
And she wasn't afraid to speak her mind, even if it meant disagreeing with her husband on certain issues.
That's right.
She was a strong advocate for literacy and education, and her Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy has had such a tremendous impact.
Oh, absolutely.
It's clear that she saw the role of First Lady as an opportunity to make a real difference in people's lives.
Absolutely. And then, of course, we have Hillary Clinton, who, as we talked about, really redefined what it meant to be a modern first lady.
Right. She shattered those traditional expectations and really paved the way for women like Michelle Obama, who brought her own unique blend of intelligence, grace, and activism to the role.
Michelle Obama was a master at using humor and personal anecdotes to humanize her husband, President Barack Obama. and make him seem more approachable.
Yeah.
But she was also a powerful advocate in her own right, championing healthy eating, supporting military families, and inspiring young people across the country.
It's amazing to see how far the role has come, since the days of Martha Washington. It's a testament to the strength, intelligence, and resilience of these women who have navigated the complexities of this unique position with grace and determination.
You're absolutely right. It's been such a fascinating journey through history. Exploring the lives of these extraordinary women and how they've shaped the role of the First Lady.
So where do we go from here? What does the future hold for the role of the presidential spouse? With the possibility of a first gentleman on the horizon, who knows what new challenges and opportunities await?
It's an exciting time to be following American politics. One thing is for certain, though, the role of the First Lady or First Gentleman will continue to evolve, reflecting the changing times and the unique individuals who inhabit it.
It's a position that demands strength, resilience, and a deep understanding of the power of symbolism and public perception. And as we've seen today, the women who have held this role have consistently risen to the challenge, leaving their mark on history and shaping the course of American society. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of First Ladies. We'll be back soon with another intriguing topic to explore. Until then, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep those amazing deep dive requests coming.